Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from 610, Wormwood, with the song that I'm going to have Google Translate say it.
Av och börda.
And I know we have some Swedish folk in the community. I'm curious how accurate that pronunciation is, primarily because I listened to it a few times and just could not replicate it, especially since it feels very rigid. And I was wondering if that was a part of the way that they make voices to say sentences and different inflections on stuff. It feels, I could never get my mouth to move along with it, nor did I even know if it was accurate to begin with. I'm sure it's close, but I'm curious if that is exactly how you would say that or not. With that said, it does translate out to, what was it in here? Of scythe and burden. So, let's dive into it and see what Wormwood is bringing to the table today. It talked about a large emigration of Swedish folk to the United States during some years. I can't remember what years they were. But those who stayed ended up being left with a massive burden, but that they felt it was better to die on their own soil than to have left their home. So I'm guessing that's what the song's about. And I don't know what kind of music I'm expecting. Huh. Strong bass presence for something that I assume is Blackened related. There we go. Interesting. We have that movement, but there's another instrument that is just the same tone over and over and over, and the other one builds into it. The production really is something though. Everything is clear. Really strong usage of the bass. Yeah, so alternating 4 and 5 beat phrases. I'd probably write that as 9/4, but still it's an irregularity. The harmonic area is it's perplexing. I can't get a read on what style of music they're taking their chord progressions from. It's like an eclectic mix of classical, folk, and metal. But it's not like I don't know. It might be that the my missing element is that I don't have context for Swedish folk music. Yeah, the more I listen, the less classical I hear. A very tasteful solo too. With strings on the outside. What instrument is that? It sounds like a bowed string instrument, but it's not a violin? Interesting that the music video ends with somebody choking and foaming at the mouth, and the song ends with just the gargling static of compressed harshes echoing out and trailing off as if that growling sound is is the final choking sound of the person in the video dying possibly, and that vocal sound just kind of fades into black. So yeah, this was intriguing. I'm curious if anyone's familiar with Swedish folk music, how much of this song's musical components especially outside of the black metal parts. The opening, uh, like starting at like 40, 50 seconds into the song, when we hit like the true black metal, alternating snare and bass, 16th notes on the guitars, simple rhythmic or sorry, simple melodic ideas, just that rising note idea that they just kept doing over and over. That part to me is very metal. But pretty much every other part of this song incorporates something else into the music that I couldn't quite put my finger on. So it makes me think that because there is a folkish element to it, but it's missing some of the harmonic qualities I would expect. Um, when I think of, well, in my mind, I was like European folk, but there's a lot of cultures across Europe. I don't think you can just group all of the musics from way earlier in time from that massive region into, I mean, you could put it in one big umbrella topic, well, one big umbrella term, but they're all going to have their own elements to them. And so I think that's what's happening here. There are folk elements to it that I recognize, but there's some harmonic qualities I don't, and I didn't know where to place them. And the more I listened, the less context I had for it, which makes me think that it's based off of folk music from Sweden. Swedish, right? I want to double check that. Yeah. So I actually let me fix this. I don't know if Wormwood is a Swedish band, but they sing in Swedish. So I guess when I stop to check out the lyrics, I'll do some research on them and figure out where they're from. But the song is also about Sweden in the 1800s, so I'm going to assume that they're pulling off of Swedish folk music as well. But yeah, like the whole back half of the song greatly intrigues me because it takes what I thought was going to be a rather straightforward black metal track and goes in a really interesting direction with it. We kick off the song with Atmosphere, and I was like, okay. And then we bring in some guitar work, but it's slower. It's like eighth note ideas, and it's sort of rockier in the harmonic area. The chords didn't feel metal. They felt rock, heavier, but not heavy. That kind of thing. I was like, okay, this is like a black and roll kind of thing going on. But then we went into the straight 16th notes, the alternating bass and snare, and I was like, okay, we're straightforward black metal here, and that's really what I expected the rest of the song to be. So when we got a subversion of that, I was quite surprised because everything after like minute two of this song was interesting. A neat subversion of black metal, still ensuring that the song is blackened in some way, whether it's the production or the use of 16th notes, the harsh vocals, something in here always felt like a tie still was connected to that black metal bass, but they just went in totally different directions with it. Some of it harmonically. Like I said, I think they use folk chords and chord progressions and note intervals to create something that feels very folkish while still holding on to this metal element to it. In a sense, this probably is folk metal. That's probably what I would classify it as. But like I said, it just rings in a different area for me. I don't have a lot of context for some of the note intervals that I heard, so it's a regional. I mean, all folk metal is regional, but I just don't think we've heard folk metal from this inspiration before, which is pretty cool. But we also had a guitar solo over this, and let me just talk about that for a second, because that was cool. Black metal to me is not a nuanced genre of music. Eclectic, experimental, sure, we can look at post black metal, second wave black metal. There's some really cool things going on in those eras. It's also just very blunt, though. Regardless of what era you're looking at, it's a lot of aggression and a lot of playing and heavy, usually darker tones. It's not really one for nuance. And so I found it quite surprising that we have this guitar solo that is very tasteful. It would have fit in really well during Tasteful Solos week, not too long ago. Very, just a very cool way to go about pushing this story forward. It felt emotive. There was a little bit of shred to it. There were some faster moving parts. It did duck into some darker harmonic qualities, but it also had a little bit of brightness to it, a little bit of positivity, slower movements. I think there was even a couple of guitar bends in there to really pull out a emotive performance to it. It quite surprised me. I've never heard black metal do anything like this. In fact, a lot of metal in general has a tough time playing solos like this outside of progressive metal that tends to have influences also from blues rock or jazz. Um, you know, Definitely metal that is influenced outside of metal. But a lot of metal bands who pretty much sit just within the metal world is just isn't a style of solo you hear too often from that. And for me to get it out of a black or something that started out as a black metal track, it's just like, wow, what? So yeah, I absolutely love that. And then it also swelled into the outro. It created the energy necessary to move into a section that incorporated layered harsh vocals in order to increase the emotional resonance of it, the weight of the section. We had some strings appear on the outside of this section. Like it was this big climactic moment that grew out of the guitar solo. It's just really masterful transition of ideas here and great composition. You know, the, these are not topics I bring up for black metal often, and it's very cool. I don't know. I don't want to keep comparing this to what I expect from the genre, but it's really difficult to frame my reaction in any other way. I honestly thought I was in store for one thing and got something in the realm of that, but very different, something that appeals to me a lot more. This feels like somebody went out of their way to find something Blackened adjacent that I would enjoy. I don't know if that's particularly why 610 brought it to my attention. Maybe they just loved the song and they wanted a reaction to it. But yeah, like this is one of the best reactions to something Blackened adjacent that I think I've had ever. I genuinely enjoyed my time with this one. It continued to surprise me and do things I was not expecting. This is one of the best ways to weaponize my expectations against me. You put me in the headspace for disappointment and then give me something that I'm absolutely going to enjoy. Yeah, I think that's the best way to word what happened here. um, Production. The production on this is fantastic. I mentioned it was high fidelity. I could hear every note out of the guitars. I could hear the separation of the guitars. The bass was present. The vocals and drums had plenty of room. When additional instrumentation came in, like the strings at the end and whatever that bowed instrument was in our finale, they could all be heard clearly, but it didn't remove any of the dirt and grit and compression that black metal tends to work with. I think to me, this is some of the best black metal production that I've heard, retaining, as I said, the characteristics that you want to be part of that sound without any of the clutter and noise that I personally don't like. And I that's not to say if you like it that it's bad. If you enjoy mid to lo-fi black metal and you just want everything to be crunched together in a wall of sound, I mean it isn't just black metal either. Post metal does this too. So if that's a sound you like, fantastic. We all have our tastes. It's not for me though. And to hear this carrying the energy of the style, but in a sound that I can understand, that's how you're gonna win me over. And it's just consistent too. Right off the start, I knew I was in for something a little special when I could hear the bass and the guitar is clearly in that opening verse. And so I do appreciate that. There's also the overall structure to this. is it completely linear? I don't think I heard any repeated ideas rhythmically, melodically. I don't know. It seemed like it just always pushed forward. I'm anticipating looking at the lyrics to see how that's broken up if they write, verse, chorus, bridge and stuff in it because I'm curious how it is structured because I didn't see any repeated portions, but that's also sort of unusual for black metal and even folk metal. So I don't know. That'd be a really cool thing going on there. So anything else I wanted to touch on here? I feel like there was. There's always some good stuff in here. So many things. Rhythmically, there's some cool things going on. We had that 9/4 section that we had a little bit of. I think everything else was in 4/4. I didn't feel any triplet vibes in here, so I don't think we entered into any 3/4 or 6/8 stuff. Wasn't a lot of polyrhythm. In fact, the drums were pretty consistent. This is probably the most black metal thing about the drums is that they were very functional, human metronome style, really sitting in the pocket really cleanly, really finely, and laying down that backbeat. There were a couple of fills in here that kind of pushed against that and introduced some syncopation, but as is pretty typical for black metal, syncopation is something you avoid, and this drummer does a lot of avoiding of that. Um, he may not always be doing blast beats or alternating snare and bass really fast, but even when they're playing slower ideas, it's all about hitting on the beat and keeping that rigidity in the background of the song. Um, I guess the last thing we got to touch on is just theme, which is, I mean, this is like black metal's bread and butter right here. Is atmosphere, it's emotional resonance. Usually I have a tough time hearing this, so I get to talk about it this time. I don't have a really strong read on it because, okay, so here's the thing, right? When it comes to atmosphere, when I hear, a sad chord progression, I know it's sad because I've heard it before in sad contexts. I don't know if there's been any study to find if sad chord progressions are sad by nature or if we've learned that they're sad through context. I'm really curious about that actually, and if anyone has seen any research papers about this, please throw them my way. It never really dawned on me until I just started talking right now, but like, is major happy because it's happy or because we've heard it alongside happy things? Like, did somebody just use this music alongside, a happy moment to play, and it just kind of stuck through repetition as people, decided to make future plays or whatever. And they're like, oh, we have a happy scene. I need to write something for it. Oh, this other guy wrote something happy. And it's like metal, right? Where you just keep wearing your influences on your sleeve and eventually things become tropes. It's just how metal solos are because people have written metal solos like this forever, right? You don't really know where the origin point was. It just sort of happened. And now when you hear it, you're like, oh, that's a pretty good guitar solo. It sounds like something I would expect from a metal band, that kind of thing. But, anyways, I don't have a context for some of these um, some of this harmonic information, the note intervals going on here. There are parts of this that are heavy for sure. There's darkness, there's sorrow, but there's also a kind of positivity. I don't know how to word it though. It's it's not optimism, it's not joy, it's not celebration, but it's not neutral either. I don't really know what it is. But the songs aren't heavy and dark all the time. And I found this to be really interesting because the song sort of moves towards from like utter weight and darkness at the very beginning with those rising guitar lines with the 16th note picking, and then it introduces more of the folk elements, and the folk elements sort of shift between sorrow, darkness, and this positive notion. By the end of the song, we have this swelling string section on the outside, and it feels uplifting almost. It's not celebratory, it's not victorious, but it is Mm, pride? I don't know that I've ever used pride to describe a musical feeling before. Is that what this is? I don't know. But I did find one of the elements of this song that I enjoyed about it. What kept me interesting was this balance between light and dark. Black metal generally is hyper focused on negativity. There is some more positive black metal out there, but for the most part, a lot of it is looking to be more sinister or darker or heavier. This balances it. But like I said, it balances it with nuance. I don't know what the positive side is. And even the darker side isn't necessarily sad or anything like that. It's nuanced. It's a very cool midpoint. I'm gonna hit some lyrics, see if I can't make sense of any of this, and then we'll wrap this one up. Yeah, so that opening snippet gives me a lot of context I need to understand this. It is about 2 years of winter that just obliterated crop growth and ended up leaving a lot of people starving, putting in the work, trying to grow the crops, and just nothing comes from it. The opening stanza is translated. This is an official translation too, so I'm hoping that at least the intention is carried through. There isn't a lot of rhyming going on, but I'm just going to chalk that up to the translation. It says, a bottomless disdain because God denied us in soil. I spilled my blood and the Lord denied us the growth. Just about putting in all this work, trying to get food, and then just nothing. Says, in hail and storm-like winds, a lonely lily is struggling to rise. Explain to our dead children why they were sacrificed without hope, defeated by the summer frost. Autumn took everything, 2 years of winter night. I'm gazing at death. And then she left, towards the new world. If I was a bird, I'd follow you on this journey. The last bird's song, the grieving earth's cry. Then I close my eyes when the sun goes down, disappearing from the misery. So, his wife presumably left for America. Saw that things weren't worthwhile here. Crops can't grow, children are dying, people are dropping like flies. I'm getting out of here, she said. And he said no. Maybe if I was someone else, I'd go, but no. It says that the only freedom from the misery is when he sleeps. I close my eyes when the sun goes down. And then the very next, actually, maybe it's not sleep. Maybe he dies here. The very next stanza says, the fog of sorrow dissipates, the black cloud of life has perished. Death in its childhood hour, my life of burden fades away. So I've only been dead for a little bit, and already all this weight that was on me, this sorrow, this misery is gone. It says, watch over my grave where the populace of grief grows. Then I'll be forever in poor soil which God betrayed. So I'll be buried in the same land that I tried to make work, that was forsaken. Yeah, that is a very heavy song about, I'm presuming, a real event, right? I don't think that this was fictional. That's wild. This comment says passage at 3 literally screams out contempt. I might have to watch this again with the lyrics up just to feel the emotion of each of these areas, because I mean it's a heavy song, right? But there also is a bit of variety in the vocal delivery, and it would be nice to hear the emotions of these sections with the lyrics. I mean, that's true with most songs, but this one I feel like I really need to get the full experience on. There are some songs where I'm like, okay, this would be better if I had the lyrics pulled up and gave it a second listen, but like this one is like I need to do this. But yeah, I think everything comes together at the end. I'm still trying to figure out what that positivity is. I think it might still be a little bit of pride, possibly, because, he chose not to leave his homeland. Despite death on the horizon, despite the inability to grow food. Uh, there's only so many ways you can describe why somebody would make that choice, because it's certainly not out of the survival instinct. Maybe it is pride. Even there at the end, he says that I don't know if it's a happiness, but it is a resilience. I am now forever in this poor soil that God betrayed, sticking with it till the end. Those are my thoughts with Wormwood's of Scythe and Burden. Let me know what you thought of this track. Anything that stands out to you, anything you'd like to add on to what I said, correct me on, give me your own perspectives or opinions on, toss all that stuff down in the description box above that. Toss all that down in the comment section above that in the description box. You'll find a link to Linktree, which takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to my Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. And that wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow. We'll continue on with transformative drum patterns. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.